Good morning, everybody. We are so excited that you are here to join us today for our Business First series. You know, this series is sponsored by Blue Cross Blue Shield, and we're really excited about these programs that are really designed to help you in your business as you navigate this changing world. My name is Petey Stefanik, and I'm on the team at Southwest Michigan First. It's really great and a pleasure to be here with you this morning. You know, we're striving to focus on topics that are relevant to you as we navigate these crazy waters, and we bring together some experts in the community to share their insights and just some different views on how things are going and where we're going on getting back to work. So we're super excited to hear from our panelists. Before we get started, just a couple of reminders. We're recording the session, so hopefully you can pay attention, and we will share out the presentations with you afterwards. So just allow you to pay more attention to the content. And then also, please use the chat box. We will be going ahead and sharing all questions with the speakers through the chat box. So if you have anything to add, please go ahead and use that. So this morning, we are inviting three different companies to the table as we go back. First, we'll hear from Jamie Balkin, who is Director of Marketing at Whiteman. We have Mike Roeder, who is the Chief Operating Officer at Fabri-Kal. And we have Nicole Fallowfield, who is the Principal and Director of Administration at Gibson. It's a really exciting format, and I can't wait to dive into this content. So just the format for today, each presenter is going to go through a presentation about some of the things that they've learned, the good, the bad, and the ugly of what's happened over the last year, and how they're going to move forward as far as bringing their teams back to the office. Are they bringing their teams back to the office, and all those kinds of insights. So to go ahead and get started, the first person I'd like to invite onto the stage is Jamie Balkin with Whiteman. Take it away, Jamie.
Thanks, Petey. Okay, can you see my screen?
All good.
Okay, great, thanks. Well, we really appreciate, on behalf of Whiteman, the opportunity to kind of share what we've done as a result and learned from the pandemic. So just kind of a couple little quick facts about Whiteman and who we are. Okay, there it goes, moving slow this morning. So we are 140 plus employees. We have 4 offices in Allegan, Benton Harbor, Kalamazoo, and Royal Oak. And we have 2 field offices in Hastings and Sodus, Michigan. So spread out pretty far. We have 3 main disciplines we focus on: architecture, engineering, and land surveying. And then we have several sub-services that support our operations. So one thing we really pride ourselves on at Whiteman are our values. Our values are we do work in a way that's fun and happy, accountable and supportive, creative and innovative, passionate. We're servant-hearted, very humble, and we're extremely family-oriented here at Whiteman. And these are the values that you see us live day in and day out. It's pretty exciting as you work here and see them in each day's operations. So, and one thing we've always prided ourselves on at Whiteman, and this was really tough during the pandemic, is we are really a fun place to work, and our team likes to hang out together. So when we had to go into lockdown, it was tough. We couldn't have, we do what are called clubs, and a staff member hosts at their house and everybody brings a dish to pass. And it's a great way to connect with one another. And what we find is if we get to know each other as people and individuals, we perform better when we're working on projects for clients. So obviously the pandemic kind of stopped some of those fun things. We couldn't do a picnic last year. We couldn't do a Christmas party. We were losing those ways to connect. So we really made some efforts to figure out how to work around that. And I'm going to look into that, or talk about that first, and then talk about where we're at now. But just like everybody, COVID really changed us, and we figured out how to make it work. We were really fortunate that we had invested in our network and our infrastructure so that it was a very seamless transition. It was like overnight we went home, and it worked, and we made it work. We do have a tool called an intranet. We do have an internal intranet that really helped it work. And then right March 1st, we had started switching over to Microsoft Teams. And so Teams, we had started it. It was our savior. It's a great way to chat and to call, and it really helped with 4 different offices to stay connected no matter where you were. If you were in your basement or in your dining room, we made it work through Teams. So some of the things we did do is we do get to know you questions at the start of every staff meeting. So we made them virtual, and we still start our staff meetings that way. And it was a great way to check in on one another and just see how everybody was doing. We did do a virtual Christmas party. At first, we weren't going to because everybody's like, oh, we're all so zoomed out and teamed out, but we did it, and it ended up being a really fun time. And then we did use social media as a tool as well. And then we set up several Q&A sessions with the president, especially when it was first happening, and just let people ask questions. What was going on with COVID? What's the plan? So that was really good. And then one of the things we did too is we gave people $200 allowance to meet whatever needs they have. If they needed an extra screen at home, or if they needed a desk chair at home, we gave them $200 to meet their needs at home. And that was a very nice option for everybody. This is one way we kind of use social media as a tool. We did a virtual Spirit Week. It would have been much more fun in person, but we did do it virtually, and everybody would send in their photos, and then we post them on the internet and on social as well. And it was a lot of fun. And this next slide is purely pictures to share some of the fun things that came from that virtual Spirit Week. A lot of times we got our pets and our kids involved, and it was a great way to stay connected. So what are we doing now? This is really exciting. We went different than a lot of places. We are doing a hybrid workout environment and a hybrid work arrangement. And each employee is speaking with their manager and talking about what's best for them. I'll use myself as an example. I am in the office at least 4 days a week, but if I do have a day where I want to be at home, I can do it. And there's not the guilt that I had pre-COVID of working from home. I guess that guilt kind of went away because it's understandable. So each employee is talking with their manager, figuring out what works best for them. It pretty much is, you will see people in 3 or 4 days a week and a couple at home. As long as the client's needs are met, that's what's most important. And we do have a couple different employees that are staying home. As long as their work is being done and they're performing and hitting with a goal set for them, we're good with that. So it's a flexible work environment. I will say we were a little bit unique in that some of our team never left the office. We have construction on construction crews and our survey crews. They stayed working throughout the whole pandemic and were in the office throughout the whole pandemic. So we were unique from a lot of industries. So some of the things that we learned and saw, and this is great, is we did see some cost savings. We have always talked about going paperless and sustainability of going paperless. We basically went paperless overnight. There was just not as much printing going on, and there still isn't. We did find better ways to collaborate between the offices because of teams and because of the need to. And now we have different teams on different projects than we ever had before. It's making it more seamless as we work on projects together. And some of the surprising expenses that you saw, our cost for meals was down significantly. And then mileage was down significantly, obviously, because we were traveling in between so many offices, that cost went away. And then we did do some cost savings in that we are not staffing our front desks at all of our offices right now. We are working to change that and working to get them back open and back to having somebody at each front desk, but we did have about a year of savings and not having that extra staff person at those front desks. So we did, as you can tell, we are, like I said, we like to hang out. We did find some creative ways to do a few activities outside. We had a golf outing last year. We went skiing. But what we found is our people missed each other. This was not too long ago where one guy's back in, but his cube mate wasn't. So he drew a picture and had to have him in his office. So we did miss one another. So we are definitely operating in that hybrid model. People are coming back into the office. It really varies day to day how many people are there. We are adapting to the new normal. Our offices still aren't open to the public, but we're working to get there pretty quickly, actually. We're just trying to staff up and be ready for that. We are recruiting talent for multiple positions. Like everyone, we're struggling to kind of find people right now. We are busier than we ever have been. All of our teams are on full throttle. And then we are really looking at getting our culture back to normal. I'm going to flip through a few slides that kind of highlight that. In our Benton Harbor office location, we do have a community garden, and we've had that for 4 or 5 years now. And this was a lunch hour one day when we weeded the garden, and it felt great to get out there and weed the garden and work together on the garden. We do have a group that started a disc golf league that they play disc golf every Sunday in all different courses throughout Southwest Michigan, and that's going really well, and they're really enjoying it. These next couple, I love this, is as people are in, we're dressing alike and wearing a uniform, not intentionally. This is one example. Here's another, and what I love about these is the smiles on everybody's faces because they're together and with people again. These are some of our field crews, and all dressed to go out in the field. This next one is probably one of my favorites. I mentioned our clubs that we have. We had our annual, what we call Wiener Fest, and Alex here is our Wiener Fest champion, and he ate 12 hot dogs in like a 2-hour period to be our Wiener Fest champion. But there was over about 120 of us that enjoyed this club where it's focused on hot dogs and different kind of hot dogs, and everybody brought a dish to pass, and it was a really nice time. The thing that we're most looking forward to is our company picnic is coming up August 1st. And as a person who helps plan that, we planned it more where it's not packed full of activities, but a chance for people to visit. And we did a special t-shirt for it. And we're really looking forward to getting our families together. That's one of the funny things is if you see the kids have grown. You see kids after a year, it's like, oh my gosh, I don't recognize you. So that's pretty exciting, and we're looking forward to that. So that's kind of where we're at. And I guess I'll turn it back over to Petey, who will introduce the next person.
Thank you, Jamie. We did have a question, and I was just trying to gather that together. How are you handling onboarding of new talent and communicating your culture while in a virtual or hybrid environment?
That's a great question. So we did do virtual onboarding, and we have done virtual onboarding throughout the pandemic, and we're working on that, getting it. These new people who've only been here a year or 6 months are not used to these activities. So we're trying to ease them into them. And I know we're starting to do like potlucks, and the simple thing is of we have a couple ladies expecting babies, and we've had little baby showers and cakes to celebrate that, and birthday cakes. So just easing them back into the normal culture of getting to know each other.
Awesome. Thank you. So we're going to go ahead and move on and hear some insights from Mike Roeder at Fabri-Kal, and he's going to share some great concepts. Again, please use the chat box. If you have questions, we'd be happy to share those with the presenters.
Thanks, Petey. I assume everybody can see my screen. Awesome. So I just want to start a little bit by giving you some background on Fabri-Kal to put it in context as we talk about, the session is recalibrating the culture. I kind of like it as the evolution. We've definitely had a stimulus that has changed the path, but we continue to evolve. So just a little bit of background. The company was founded in 1950 here in Kalamazoo. So we're 71 years old. We are privately owned and family owned. We are the 10th largest thermoformer in North America. And if you wonder what a thermoformer is, we take plastic resin and we turn it into cups and portion cups and so forth. We have two major businesses. One is food service, and the importance of this is during the pandemic, we had to keep operating. We are considered an essential business, and because since about last March, we have provided about 20 billion food items, packaging items that have been consumed here in the U.S. So that's about 60 per person in the U.S. So we have continued to operate throughout the whole pandemic. And in our food service segment, it'll be drink cups. It's going to be, you can see the products down there, our fiber containers that you would get for takeout, some of our side containers where you might get coleslaw, items like that. And then the other side of our business is what we call custom or CPG. And that goes to the folks like Dannon, Chobani, General Mills for Yoplait. You can see the Hershey's Twizzlers. We make a lot of the packaging and containers for those companies. So when we talk about culture, I think one of the things that's important is what is the purpose and what do we rally around? And I think here at Fabri-Kal, it's definitely about sustainable packaging. And you can see our vision statement there, which is to be the leader in earth-friendly packaging that people love to use. And so really, we do want to rally around that. And, as we proceed forward, it's how do we continue to drive that momentum? How do we continue to drive that purpose? And so the reason I like to call this the evolution and not the recalibration of culture. I think about culture, it's always about purpose. How do you get people to rally around the purpose? How do you make sure people know expectations? How do people feel that they have a sense of belonging? Those have definitely shifted with COVID, but it starts with purpose. And so how do we make sure that people feel aligned to the purpose? And even if we're doing things differently today, how do we continue to solidify the purpose and continue to forward the purpose to individuals? So the last slide on the backdrop is we do operate at multiple locations. So here in Kalamazoo, we have our headquarters, which is where I am today. We also have the plant that you probably see along I-94 as you're headed east, and it's on the right-hand side. We have our oldest manufacturing location is Hazleton, Pennsylvania. We have one in South Carolina. We have one in Burley, Idaho. And then we have a distribution center in California. The important part about this for our culture is about 90% of our people are actually located in the manufacturing centers. So as we talk about things that have changed and we talk about work from home and what that process looks like, we're really talking about 10% of the population, but yet we need to do that with an eye towards the 90%. And so how do we make sure that it all makes sense to everybody, as we proceed forward? So a little bit on the recalibration. So as I mentioned, we did continue operations throughout. And, while that may seem, rather mundane because we were a essential business, being a food packaging company, what it really brought to light was there was a tremendous sense of responsibility for us, for employee wellness. You can imagine there was also a tremendous sense of trust the employees had to have that, we were going to take care of them. And so interesting to that was we do things like screening questions. We did a lot of work with partitions, a lot of work with separating the groups into small pods so that the blue pod worked different from the orange pod. They had their own break rooms, restrooms. We brought in restrooms and break rooms from the outside with trailers. We did everything to separate them so that we would prevent any transmission of COVID throughout the facility. When I think about it, as we reflect upon it, that same care, well-being for employees, we ask 5 questions every day when you came in. Well, maybe we won't be able to ask 5, but every day that same wellness, how you feeling today? Making sure that we're starting the day, that everything is about well-being of the employees, making sure they're in a good state to be there. So we don't want to lose that sense of responsibility. That it does start with people and everything that we do. It's not about, we weren't worried about making product. We knew we were going to have to do that, but it was all about putting the employee first and then product would follow. The other thing was a fair amount of travel has changed. So the sales team, myself, we used to do a fair amount of traveling. I traveled about 6 times during the period from, say, last May until this March. And it was interesting because they were very select travels, only when I had to be somewhere to meet somebody at a specific location. So I get vaccinated in March and I feel like, cool, this is a sense of freedom. I can travel again, but it's gone from a personal safety thing to a real work, time, work-life balance situation. So there'll be times where I'm still traveling, but instead, and it was fun to travel. You get out when you didn't have to worry about, when I was vaccinated, so didn't have to worry about contracting the virus. But now it's different. Now it's about wanting to go to places because we need to be there. So I think travel will be greatly reduced. We're still going to go places. There's still times I think there's a good balance between needing to be social and with customers. Obviously, when I go to the plants, it's hard to go to the plant by virtual. So I will go to the plants. But there's a good balance there of when to do it for the time that it takes to travel. A meeting with General Mills in Minneapolis, that's a 2-day event when you're traveling out of Kalamazoo. If I can do that once a year live to keep the relationship going and the other 2 or 3 times by virtual, that's fantastic. So I do think you're going to see hybrid in travel. Meetings, for me, there was 2 big learnings in meetings. One is there's cool technology. So the fact that, you could do Zoom meetings, we can do content like today. is fantastic. The other part is you still want the networking. So we'll balance these with, you do a content day and then you do one where we can all interact over a cup of coffee beforehand. I think there's a good balance of those. The other thing for me on meetings was the hybrid meetings is the only thing I don't want to do. So we'll have a mix of meetings. So we'll do Zoom meetings and we'll do in-person meetings. The one that I'm going to try to stay away from is where 6 people are in a conference room and 2 people are conferenced in, because it's hard for those 2 people to be drawn into the conversation. So we had done that before, but I do think there's a great opportunity with roundtables where we can get a great mix across the plants. It used to be we dealt with, a group at a time. Now you can have a Zoom meeting where I have a bunch of folks from different locations on, which is cool because they get to meet each other better. But the only thing we're going to try to avoid is those hybrids. Similar to that, the workshops were really a tool we found was this Miro tool. I'm not sure if anybody's familiar with Miro, but it's basically a white paper where you get to write out Post-it notes and put them on. So it's virtual. So we could be in all different locations. So rather than doing a 2-day workshop, which all of us are familiar with, you come the first day and everybody's really good from about 8 o'clock to 2 o'clock. And then by the second day, we get really good participation from about 8 o'clock to 11 o'clock because we have to bring people to town. We do these workshops. Now to be able to use collaboration tools like Miro, we can, what I call little sprints. So we can do our strategy session, which we did last year on Miro. We can involve different people because we could Zoom them in, introduce them to Miro. So when we're talking about sales, we could have salespeople deeply involved. And we could then do it in, an hour session, take a couple hours off, take a day off, come back a week later, do the next hour session, involve a lot more people. It was really cool collaboration tool. So I think workshops, there may be times when we bring everybody together for, obviously product design, things along those, but the strategy sessions, I don't ever see doing a 2 or 3 day workshop here in Kalamazoo again. It'll be spread out over, 4 or 5 weeks, and we'll do it through collaboration tools. And then behaviors definitely were modified and they remain modified. So I also, separate from Fabri-Kal, I am a partner in a couple of coffee stores here. And one of the unique dynamics was people still came to get coffee every day. So people were working at home and we had the lobbies closed and they'd wait in those lines and we were really grateful, but people would wait in line for 15 minutes. So then we reopened the lobbies and people still wait in line for 15 minutes in the drive-through. And part of it is, obviously our crews, they do a great job of interfacing with people as they're coming through the drive-through, but people, checking email, doing phone calls, their behavior changed from coming in the lobby. So our lobbies are open, but we get maybe 10% of the traffic. The other part that was interesting to me is, and I'm sure everybody's experiencing it, we're definitely experiencing it in the packaging industry, delivery. So people, that are door dashing a coffee. We get DoorDash coming through several times a day, and those behaviors still remain. And it's similar to what I'm looking here at Fabri-Kal. We opened up the office when the governor allowed us to open up everything. And, we are open, anybody can come in. The reality of it is probably about 15% are coming in. So that's behavior. We shouldn't try to, as we're going forward, and I'm going to talk a little bit about our work from home policy. As we're going forward, that means that people are finding that they can do the work in different spaces better. And the people that are here feel like they can do that work here better. There's probably things that we're going to want to make sure we forward, but we shouldn't ignore the fact that folks aren't, that's a behavior that has shifted. And it's probably shifted for a good because work-life balance is probably better, less stress with certain things that you don't have to do. If it was natural and everybody was flocking to come back to the office, we'd have a full parking lot right now. So it's just a behavior that I think as we're evolving in this go forward, we just got to be conscious of observing people's behaviors. Don't judge them, observe them, and then try to figure out where we want to get as objectives and then see how we merge those two. So with that, I'm going to switch to the work from home. So I was amazed, that we literally, as Jamie said, we went overnight. Thank goodness for our IT department, the systems we had in place. We probably take about 150 orders a day in here. And so most of this headquarters is a lot of the order entry, the processing, the invoicing, the accounting, the IT. And literally on March 16th, we sent everybody home. We sent them home with their computers. We sent them home with chairs, desks, dual monitors, and we were still running and business was operating on the 17th. So kudos to the IT department and actually to the departments. I think the teams all started meeting So actually, some people feel more connected today than they did when we were in the building because their teams are meeting every morning. And so I'm pretty confident the teams themselves are connected well. And then as the leader, what I'm trying to make sure is that the teams are connected amongst each other. So we definitely proved we can work from home. We can't, ignore the fact that a lot of the work that we do here at the headquarters can get done from home. I also like people. I like energy. I like people in the office. I will say that just because I like people in the office, that shouldn't be the reason. That serves me. It may not serve them the best. So while I would like it that I want them to be here, that's what I want. And certainly we need energy. We need the socializing of people. But we also need to make sure that we're not doing it just for compliance. I don't want compliance. I want commitment. And so compliance is, makes it easier on us, makes it easier on me. Maybe it serves what I want, but that's not the real answer. We are working on our work from home policy. We're going to be issuing it here in a couple of weeks. We have pretty much are allowing people to come in, work where they want until Labor Day. And then we will go to our work from home policy. So I'll call these the Rotors design criteria that, just some of the things, things that are important to me as we go forward. It really depends where the individual can perform the job the best and where the jobs perform best. Obviously, if you need some of our elaborate equipment, like in the tech center, we can't send that home with you. So those jobs will be rallied and centered around the equipment. As I said, there's a lot of processing. Our customer service group is actually more accurate at home, probably because there's not 15 other customer service and credit reps around them all on the phone talking. So, their accuracy, making them come to work, making the IT department come to work just when they're working pretty much transactional, doing programming work, very little inner work, collaboration work between them. Making them come just because we said so doesn't make sense to me. So it is going to be based on the work itself. It's going to be based, similar with Jamie, how the supervisor, how the leader and that individual, if you're struggling as an individual, you probably want to be here closer. And so, so that you can get some guidance and some help, some coaching to go through. But for the most part, people have done great at home. And so I think that, we will do the work where it can be done best. It is one of our premises, or at least my premise, that the individual, the teams are connected, but they need to stay connected to the company. So as we're going to definitely have to ramp up social lunches. We do want to draw people together. I do think there's an important part of social that we would have naturally done just because we were in the building. So we'll have to have lunches, happy hours, do things. But it's also incumbent upon the individual to attend. Now, we've got to make it attractive to attend, but we also need to, as leaders, be monitoring our folks and make sure they are attending so that we don't have people drifting away from that central purpose. Again, how do you really ignite and invigorate the purpose and where you're going is somewhat done by making sure people stay connected. I do believe that leadership needs visibility and coincidence/osmosis. And I then put this is not the Rotor definition of osmosis. This was actually from the dictionary. The process of gradual or unconscious assimilation of ideas, knowledge. I do believe that there's a lot that happens when you're around the business. We all can run our functional areas pretty well. There's a lot that happens when functional areas collide in the hallway and you hear something, quite honestly, just being sensitive. Right now, as many companies, we struggle with labor. So we've got more demand than we can produce. You probably want to have a feeling of that and be sensitive and not be isolated if you're a leader, and start asking our manufacturing plants to do a bunch of new stuff, or asking our customer service and demand planning groups to do a bunch of things right now, because they're probably already on the high stress factor. So osmosis is a big deal. And so I do believe that the leaders need to be visible, and it's not, we need to be, there's lots of the jobs where the work is collaborative. We need that coincidence. If everything has to be scheduled in a Zoom meeting, we lose the interaction. It becomes very content driven, and we stick pretty much to the content of that message. So I do believe that we need leadership, and a lot of the collaboration jobs need to be visible and in the office. We are designating a primary location, or at least that's our intent at this point. So if you're in the office and you're in one of those jobs, leadership, your equipment work will be here. If you're designated at primary at home, we're going to have hoteling stations. Everybody's got a laptop. We'll have places. We have dual monitors. All of us use dual monitors. So we'll have spaces in the building, but it'll give us a chance to reconfigure our building too, to be better for those collaboration spaces without literally having to add a bunch of space to the building. So we are going to do that. And then lastly is synchronous communication. So while where you work best is one thing, we still work 8 to 5. And so one of the things I noticed over this period is, if I send an email at 10, where I might have normally gotten a response back at 1, if that person's doing something, I'll get it at 8 at night. Well, if I'm not on at 8 at night, it goes till 10 the next morning. So, we do have to make sure that we all try to stay in the loop. That 8 to 5 is our, we know where each other is. So it's kind of like the baton handoff in the relay race. We know exactly where everybody is. So that's, part of our policies that the, 8 to 5 is our work hours. That's when we would do most of our communication. Certainly people are going to have things to do. That's one of the beauties of the flexibility of working from home. But the reality of it is it's not meant to be, people having shifts that go from 10 o'clock at night to 3 in the morning when you're asynchronous with everybody else. So for me, moving forward really is, again, I think it's more of a progression. We don't want to lose fact that we're so appreciative of, that sense of responsibility we had, the sense of trust that our employees had in us, the appreciation that, they kind of blindly came in every day back in April of 2020, when we were all trying to figure out how to protect and what the virus meant. We got to make sure we continue that same level of appreciation and recognize that and move forward. We're going to be more flexible. I mean, we can't deny the fact that people were able to work from home. They were able to perform well. So, we've got to be flexible and really try to figure out that next evolution of where it's best for people. And attraction and retention are going to be elevated. I mean, it used to be people like, oh, I could take this job, but they're over in Chicago. Well, they may do it now remotely, right? People's lifestyles have shifted. The pandemic has moved people mentally. So, people are doing things differently. People want a better work-life balance. Those are all things that are going to make attraction and retention that much more elevated. So, moving our culture forward quickly to be able to captivate people, get them committed. We don't want compliance. That to me are kind of the keys and the learnings, besides dealing with all the other issues of the pandemic. It's really, it gave us that elevated importance of people. And how what we're here to do is to make sure they are able to do the best that they can do. So with that, Petey.
Thank you, Mike. That was amazing. It's so wonderful to hear, how you're doing things and how you're embracing the changes. I do have a question for you before we move on to Nicole.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find your staff looks forward to and enjoys participating in optional cultural events that are put on by the workplace, or are there still many that choose not to participate?
I think there's a few, so I would say not many. So it is kind of interesting. We had a lunch here, and a lot of people came to lunch, and it was, oh, how great it is to see everybody and all this. And then they went back home after lunch. So it was good. They all came, which is what we need. And you could also tell that, well, now they're going to go back to work and they would prefer to work at home. So I think we do have a few that we are concerned about. But again, that's our job as leaders to know who that is on your team. They're meeting with them daily, but as a functional basis, we want to make sure that we stay socially connected. So it'll be dependent upon the leaders to make sure we're drawing our team in. But most people are coming. They like the social events very much.
We are social animals. Great. I've got a bunch of questions that I'm going to hold for the end, because now we're going to go ahead and hear from Nicole Fallowfield. Very excited to hear what you have to share with us.
Great. Thank you. Let me get my screen pulled up here. There. Okay. Awesome. So you probably are going to hear very similar things from our experience that you've heard from Mike and Jamie. I'll just give you a little bit of background about Gibson. So we are a risk management consulting firm. So we advise clients in the areas of property and casualty, employee benefits, personal insurance. So anything risk related that a business could undertake, that's what our consultants and our teammates are responsible for. We were actually founded in 1933 in Plymouth, Indiana, and by a man named Dan Gibson. His son, Dave Gibson, eventually took it over, and today there are no more Gibsons at Gibson, but we are about, only 12 years away from celebrating our 100th anniversary. So we're super excited about that. We do have 4 locations. We're headquartered in South Bend, Indiana. We have an Indianapolis location, Fort Wayne, Indiana location, as well as a location in Kalamazoo. We have 150 employee owners. So that's one of the things that's pretty unique about Gibson is that we are 100% employee owned. We have 22 employee shareholders who had invested in the company, and then 150 ESOP participants. So part of our organization is owned by individual employee shareholders, and then part of it, over a third of it, is owned by all of our employees through the form of an ESOP. That is one of the things that's super important to our organization, is that sense of employee ownership. And I think because of that, it did help us through the challenging times in 2020 and the times that continued in 2021. So pre-COVID, and we've actually positioned this as a return to culture with our employees. And so I thought it was really interesting that the topic today was a culture recalibration. And that is how we've been talking to our employees about a return to culture. So it's not just returning to work. Pre-COVID, we were mostly a 5-5. So people were in the office mostly 5 days a week. Of course, we have our sales teams that are out and our consultants meeting with clients. So they may have not been in the office as frequently, but the majority of our service team members were in the office 5 days a week. We've always worked in a team-based environment. Even our salespeople work in a team-based environment. So that collaboration, some of those spontaneous interactions that Mike talked about have always been such a key part of who we are. And so when things changed in March of 2020, that really disrupted that to a degree. One thing that I will say, similar to what you heard from Jamie and Mike, is that our IT team was really prepared. We had switched to all laptops probably maybe 5 years ago. So everybody had already had a laptop. We had an incident several years ago in South Bend where there was a gas line leak, and that caused that entire building to have to be evacuated. And as a result of that, we already had a lot of things prepared that really prepared us for COVID. So we were able to really get everybody working from home right away because we were already set up for that. From a technology standpoint, we'd already had Zoom licenses, so we just increased the number of our licenses for our team members so that everybody could have access to Zoom. So from March of 2020 until about now, we've been mostly a 0-5. So not as many people visiting the office or sporadic traffic within our various offices. We do have a handful of people who never went home. They were in the office full time, even from the start of the pandemic. We did start a work from home grant program when we knew mid-March that we had to send everyone home. And so what that entailed was we allowed people to have up to $600 to purchase additional equipment. So additional monitors, docking stations. If we had team members who wanted to purchase more than one monitor, they really needed to have a docking station for that to function appropriately. Surge protectors, which you don't think of, but you want to make sure that your equipment is safe. Chairs, desks, those sorts of things were available for team members to purchase. And we had, probably 90% of our employees took advantage of it to some degree or another in purchasing some equipment to be able to work from home. And we just wanted to make sure that not only could they work efficiently, but work safely. So we're still team-based, of course, and I would say that similar to many organizations, we tried to keep that team connection with, virtual coffee chats, virtual happy hours, some of those social events. But Zoom fatigue did set in. I think it's a real thing. We hear from some of our service team members that they're in more meetings than ever before. What could have been just a pop into somebody's office to collaborate or talk about a client issue or need, now is a scheduled Zoom meeting. So we're trying to be cognizant of that. We bring all of our managers and team leaders together every month for a group called Leading with Impact, and we discuss these things and talk to our leaders about, making sure that we find those opportunities, as Mike mentioned, to really lead by example as leaders, to bring people in for some of that more collaborative work. The other thing that I do think that really did help our team stay connected, certainly our just the culture that we built up to this point was one based on trust, collaboration, creating a great experience for not only our employees, but for our clients. And so that's really at the heart of who we are, and our employees really own that. But we also run on something called EOS, which stands for Entrepreneurial Operating System. And part of that structure has everybody on a team meeting every week. And so regardless of whether you were home or in the office, and our teams are scattered to a degree. So one of our teams might have team members in all of our various locations. And so we kept up with our system, because that's part of who we are. It's ingrained in how we operate. And so weekly check-ins were already part of our process. The one thing that I will say that was nice about the Zoom is for our teams that had team members in multiple locations, is now they could participate more fully, because before they were just conferencing in before we had all of the Zoom licenses. That is one thing that we will continue to do. I agree with Mike. It's difficult. You don't want to have a hybrid meeting if possible, if you can bring everybody together in one spot, but it's not always feasible. And so what our team members are doing now is, even if they have 5 of 7 team members in the same room, everybody's bringing their laptops, still signing into Zoom, so that the 2 or 3 who aren't there can still see their faces, which makes them feel more connected to the team. So that's something we will continue to do. In fall of this year, we are targeting a 3-2, and this has been communicated in more than once with our team members. So back in April, we held a virtual town hall meeting where I talked to our team about what our philosophy regarding flexible work was going to be moving forward. And so we want to meet a spirit of 3-2, which would be 3 days in the office, 2 days remote. Of course, if people want to work in the office 5 days a week, then have at it. That's great. Because we do want to continue our culture of collaboration, knowledge sharing, team building. Mike really hit on that osmosis, and we feel that really strongly. Our other team members, we learn from each other, from being around each other, from talking about different client challenges and how are we going to solve this problem for this particular organization. And, oh, well, I had something similar happen with one of my clients. So that's a real part of who we are, and we know that happens best in person. We also know that with our, when we've onboarded new team members, which we onboarded many during COVID, that they don't get the same experience because they're not able to make those connections as readily as if they were in person. So we are encouraging our managers and team leaders, when they do have a new team member join, more office time is better than not. So let's get them ingrained in the culture, help them to be able to learn, develop, and and just have that better experience. The other thing we've talked to our teammates about is big P versus little p. And by that, I mean big productivity type things. So if you're debating on which day you want to work from home or work in the office, we're saying go to the office for the big P stuff, for that strategic stuff that needs to happen, for those team building things that need to happen. Save your work from home days for that little piece stuff. If you've got something, a document to put together that requires, lots of attention to detail, maybe that is better done at home where you can really focus and not be interrupted. So we've talked to our team members about big P type things versus little P type things. The other thing we are working on is just making it fun to get back to the office. So in May, we did Cinco de Mayo lunches at all of our locations. We just did an ice cream social 2 weeks ago at all of our locations. We are planning a game day for September. And then again, just making sure that we keep remembering that all of these things need to be team-based, but cross-functional. So not just the employee benefits team and not just the property and casualty team. We've done these things cross-collaborative. But September 7th is the date that we announced this week that we expect everybody to try to meet that spirit of the 3-2 in the office. Some of the obstacles, as many of you have already talked about, just the unknown, what was going to happen with the virus, how long was this going to take place, staying connected, the burnout, with just like my home is now my workplace and when can I get away from it? The onboarding, I would say the other challenge too was In Indiana, all of the school systems were different with what learning looks like. My kids were in a school district where we had full in-person learning all year last year. We had others that were in a hybrid. So just trying to stay up on what all of the different schools were doing. In Indiana, some of our restrictions were lifted earlier in various counties versus others. And then we also had to be cognizant of our Michigan location. So that was one of the challenges too, just those unknowns and making sure we were keeping a pulse on it. I mean, I think the opportunities that came out of this is thinking differently about how we worked. Efficiencies that can be gained by utilizing and leveraging technology differently than we ever have before. Certainly that flexibility and more balance for many of our team members. And then also the opportunity for new talent pools, you know, opening up talent in different markets. That also could be an obstacle because we also know that our competitors also look at our talent. And so that's something that we're aware of and making sure that we continue to put our employee experience first and foremost so that we can keep great talent and recruit additional talent. So with that, I will turn it back over to you, Petey.
Great. Thank you so much, Nicole. It was really, really interesting. I want to thank all of our presenters on this and a couple of questions that I'm going to follow up with. And if you have anything to add to the chat, please go ahead and do that. But first, you know, the one theme that kind of came through everybody's presentation was how you trust your teams. And maybe before you insisted on some things and you're trusting that they're getting their work done and they've proven that. And I think that's, really interesting. And Mike, you touched on purpose and that being a core. How, and all of you can jump on this, how do you share and reinforce the purpose of the organization and how that plays into some of what's going forward?
So what we've been doing virtually is we've had town hall or roundtable meetings once a quarter. This last one was on kind of there's always a strategy renewal piece, kind of where we're going, and strategy is always evolving. So it's keeping that purpose front and center. Probably is our social thing, celebrations. We need to start making sure, we all get excited. We go to the Growlers game and they got the, our cups out there. And so, how do we gather at certain places where we can just kind of reignite ourselves, with our purpose. But most of it right now has been through town halls, roundtables.
I'll echo that. We as well make sure as a company, we meet 4 times a year and then do special sessions for Q&As. We're ready to be able to do those in person because it's tough because you're not seeing expressions and you're not seeing people's reactions. But the fact that we're doing them and leaving it open for questions has been probably the best tool. And I think one thing I want to throw in there is you want people to feel comfortable. Mike kind of addressed that during his thing is if you're not comfortable coming to something yet, it's okay. Our picnic's coming up and I had somebody say, hey, I'm not comfortable doing inside things yet, but we still want you to come because most people will be outside. So I think I've even told my daughter that do what's comfortable for you right now. And that's what we want our employees to do as well.
Great. Nicole, anything to add on that? Or is that?
No, we're very similar. We have what we call a state of the company, a quarterly update every quarter. So that we've always done that. So we've just, we continue to do that. We were more deliberate about additional communication over the last year and a half, though, just to stay connected with our team. I think the fact that we're 100% employee owned also helps, though, because I think that, people, they know where we're heading, they know what our goals are. We're very transparent with all of those things that we're trying to accomplish as an organization. So that just helps keep people engaged.
Yeah, enlightened self-interest is always a good thing. Mike, you mentioned really, taking into consideration the people who were essential and had to be there or were working full-time versus the flexibility of the other people. How did you balance, maybe some of if was there resentment? Did you have to balance any of that within the organization to be sensitive to those folks who said, I had to be here the whole time and they're at home in their pajamas?
That's everybody has a job to do. So no doubt, those that are running the equipment, those that are in the plants, their job is, that's what they do. And so but one thing you got to do is their job is probably more important most days than my job, because you can operate a couple of days without me. You can't operate without them. So you got to make sure that appreciation piece, and we have to continue to do a better job of that. I think, you just got to tell people it's a reality of what we are, that everybody's equally as important, and it's just where we can get the job done the best. So you're going to hear a little bit. I mean, there's no doubt we hear some of that, but there's other benefits. That they're on 3 days, all 4 days. So that, it's got to make sure that we're trying to do the best for everybody, and not just, fairness isn't always the best answer. So what everybody thinks is fair isn't always the best.
That's good answer. One thing is, as people are coming back to the office, you mentioned people being at home in their pajamas or other bad habits. A lot of people are, on calls and they're multitasking. They're answering emails while they're in a meeting, and, not being completely focused. And that's kind of one of those things that's kind of just evolved. How are you working on setting expectations, or how are you addressing those, even from attire? What's appropriate now? What are you expecting, and how are you laying out kind of those parameters for your teams?
I'll kind of start with this one. I know our president has done a reminder that, hey, this is a place of work, please dress appropriately. It just a soft, settled reminder. And then the multitasking is real. I think the True Tale, and I really like Nicole's idea of if half are on Zoom, having your screens in front of them so everybody sees faces. I know I multitask a lot. So when I have to sit through I think I've had to sit through a couple of meetings where I couldn't multitask and it felt weird. So it's going to be reprogramming yourself and getting out of those habits and allowing people time to get to that point again. Is probably the best thing. But I love the suggestions about, trying, both Mike and Nicole had, for kind of combating some of that.
Great.
Yeah, we did a similar communication when we rolled out what our philosophy was going to be moving forward regarding flexible work. Just talked about, appropriate attire, but then also, minimizing some of the distractions at home, pets and, kids and things like that. Just reminding people that, we are, running a business, and we need to be professional. And so while early on there was probably a lot more grace for dogs barking and kids screaming in the background, that won't be the expectation moving forward.
Awesome. Mike, anything to add on that expectation piece, and especially the multitasking?
I think, so I'm okay with pajamas at home as long as you're not beating customers. Here, nobody was, I think when people come in the office, they've all been dressed professionally. So I don't, I think that's just been a natural carryover. I think for us, it's measuring, with the work it's done. I agree that, we were a lot more forgiving early on. Now, if the dogs are barking, one of our department heads, he was telling me, he has a morning meeting every morning, and he's got one or two people that, which is part of the ones he's concerned about coming in socially, they don't like to turn their video on. So kind of one of the requirements is, please put your video on when we're having team meetings, just so that we know you're here and present. So, judge people by the work they do, and what they do, not, necessarily the actions that they're taking to get there. So I think, as a good leader, you're always going to try to judge the result, the outcomes, not all the steps.
I just have one other question before we wrap up. How are you going to share this as far as putting things in writing? Are you going to continue to be flexible? Or are you expecting that come September 7th, when everybody gets back, that format will be more solidified? Or are you still expecting that there'll be some possible shift?
So I will say, we were intentionally a little gray in what we were planning to do, because and we did mention that this is the plan, this is the philosophy. We're not going to ask people to track their days in the office. We're not having managers track your days. We do ask that you designate on your calendar so people have an idea of when you're going to be in. So we really left that up to our managers to own that process. with reserving the right to reevaluate. So we didn't put anything in strict writing. I did consult with some peer organizations, and some of them were really like, you had to meet with your manager, you had to like sign off on which days you were going to be home, and we just didn't feel like that was who we were. So we have intentionally been, you know, a little squishy, if you will, on what our policy is going to be. I guess if we find that people aren't coming back, we'll, you know, probably just encourage managers like, let's see if there's truly an issue. We don't want to lose good employees over, you know, forcing coming back to the office if there's, you know, a true reason where, you know, maybe they would just be more comfortable working from home. But our expectation is 3-2.
Awesome.
I see Katie's actually on the call, who is our head of people. So we are going to put in writing. I've been very squishy only because I wanted to see how things evolve. So we will be putting in writing, but again, it'll be a general policy. There'll be flexibility in that policy. I think people need to know what's expected. So obviously, you know, we want to lay that out. And I think, you know, if I like Nicole's little P, big P. So, you know, again, it's not always about fair. Well, how come they can work home and I can't? You know, there's our jobs in our organization that have a lot of little P work, and they probably designate themselves. And, you know, so it's a matter of fit. If you want a job that has a lot of little P work, we can, but if you're a job that naturally has a lot of big P work, then I would expect to hear more. So, you know, some of that is going to be about the leaders making sure they're coaching the people and getting the right fit. You know, if you find that where you work is more important than what you work, then maybe we need to refit the organization. But I think we will put it in, you know, the general policy in writing so people know what's expected.
Awesome. Jamie, anything quick to add? You got a minute?
We do have a written policy, and Petey, feel free to share that. I shared it with Petey yesterday. So it is a hybrid work policy that we put together, and we're happy to share it. We did put some notes down on paper. So, and it is flexible. That's
awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you all so much. Your insights are really helpful. I'm sure they're helping everyone kind of think about how they're going to manage this back to work. I also want to share with you a couple things that are coming up. We have in the Business First series coming up on Thursday, August 5th at 9 a.m. We're going to be talking about community efforts to support entrepreneurism. We understand that it takes a village to help little businesses get started. And so we're working to support those companies. So if you're interested, please hop in on that. We'll hear from the Downtown Kalamazoo Partnership and some of their pop-up efforts. We'll talk to Carl McAllister, who is an entrepreneur who started a business on activewear, and Nicole Bloom from the YWCA to talk about how they're addressing childcare. So those will be on that one. And then also kind of as a great follow-up to this, this Business First series, we're going to have one on Thursday, August 19th, again at 9 a.m. That's on work-life balance. And we've talked now about the companies and how the companies are viewing this and how they're trying to be flexible. So how then do individuals take responsibility to make sure that they're doing the best for themselves and the company and supporting the companies. So we will be talking about that on Thursday, August 19th. One last note, I just want to thank Blue Cross Blue Shield again for their support of this program. I think that these conversations are really helpful, and I hope that you find them that way too. So thank you very much and have a great Thursday. Bye-bye.